Bob Edwards here, talking about rock. Just want to thank you all for tuning into our show. Over the last 2 years, we've talked to so many different local bands and national artists. We just wanted to give you a quick sneak peek and a snippet of what you may have missed over the last 2 years with some of the great artists that we spoke with. So stick around. We'll be right back.
We know you got a lot of new projects going on, but I wanted to kind of get a little timeline going. If we go back for a minute, let's go back to the early days when you guys were, rocking in Tallis, playing all over the place. Can you tell us a little about that? I think you guys came from the Tweeds, right?
Yeah, we started out, I came out of high school, we joined a band called Opus One, which with a couple of guys that later became luminaries in the local scene. Bruce Bricado on guitar, Ted Reinhardt on drums, 11-piece horn band. Mike Migliori was the alto player. He went off to become quite famous himself as well. And 3 lead singers, 4 horns, guitar, bass, drums, keyboard. So we did our first gig at the Beef and Ale house. I think I made $7.20 was my take on that gig. So that was while I was still in high school, and then Dave Constantino and I were at the same high school, and he asked to borrow my amp, and I said, well, I was just, it was my pride, Joe. I couldn't let people borrow my amps. He goes, you play bass, don't you? And I go, yeah. And so he said, well, would you like to, join the band, the Tweeds? And I knew the band, and they had a hit single years earlier, and they were kind of, they had cooled off quite a bit since then. But they were a pretty famous band in the Buffalo area in the 60s. So I joined them, and we had a good run for a while, then split up. Then Dave and I decided to stay together, and we got Mike Piccolo for the first version of Tallis. Now, there's since been about 8 versions of Tallis. I'm going to try to do a family tree someday
Right.
on a giant sheet of paper.
Right. Now,
But,
now correct me if I'm wrong. What I heard is that the original name for the band came from a horse. Is that correct?
yeah, somebody had a horse, and I think Dave got on it, and it spooked and jumped over his car, and
Oh, wow.
he jumped off, and he was so scared he threw up. So we thought, perfect, that's a perfect band name for it.
Awesome.
So we had eventually we went through different permutations. The next drummer was our drum roadie, Brian Brothman, just for about a month. And then we got Rocco Oliverio from down in Jamestown area. I forgot the name of the Salamanca. That's it. And then his brother was also a drummer, and they played double drum. So we got him in the band. It was the first 4-piece Tallis. And then that kind of fell apart, and we got Paul Varga, the Tweed drummer, back in, and that became the Tallis that was. A lot of people look at that as the main version of Tallis, and we went on to play a lot and get a lot of local notoriety. Then things weren't going so well, so they decided to have me leave the band and take the name and start a different Tallis. So they hired Mike Marconi and Dale Croston from Whale in Rochester, a great band. And I went off and joined Ron Rocco from Rochester and 2 other guys, and had a band called Light Years. That went on for about a year. Then Dave and Paul called me on my first night of playing in a band called Sheehan with Phil Narrow on vocals, Mark Miller on drums, and I forgot who the guitar player was. It might have been Dave Munkoff, who was also in Whale. Incestuous bunch we were. And so they called me on opening night when I was playing at the Caboose in Fredonia, and asked me to come back to the band. I said, okay, because it was a struggle to start a new band. So I went back, and that was the version of Tallis that went on to do the very first record, and then sink your teeth into that and do the Van Halen tour.
Yep.
And in about '83, that was getting pretty shaky. They decided to quit and left me holding the bag with the PA lights, sound truck, crew guys, and everything. So I hustled that Sheehan band back together. Mark Miller and Phil Narrow, got a guitarist from LA named Mitch Perry, and we went off. We had to replace Mitch at one point and got Johnny Angel in the band. And that was the band that played on the Yngwie tour. And our opening night was Los Angeles in summer of 85. And David Lee Roth came out to the show that night and had arranged to have a meeting with me at his house the day before. And I went out there because he had contacted me earlier about that. So
well, you guys opened for Van Halen on like 30 plus shows I saw, right?
1980, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was just the one show, but I was reading it was like 30 plus shows. So Dave must have had his eye on you.
Well, I just found it the other day. A lot of stories people hear, and they can't believe it's possibly true. For example, U2 opened up for Talus at Stage 1, and people didn't believe us for years. They no way. They thought, yeah, I swear to God, they did. Right. And then when U2 years later played Rich Stadium, Bono announced that they had opened. They had a great night because they opened for this band called Talus, and so you could hear all the jaws drop. But
right.
I just found since we lost that, I've been going over some of my remembrances of his. But I told people, yeah, the last night of the tour, Ed came up to me and said, "Hey, let me give you my number and don't tell Michael." So I was like, "Whoa, holy cow!" Valerie had given him a little card, like a they were in love.
Right.
And he took the card out and ripped a piece off of it and wrote his number down. And there it is.
Oh, wow.
And it was from the card that she wrote him.
So they were thinking about bringing you into Van Halen at that time. Is that the case? They were thinking about bringing you maybe into Van Halen. Was that the case?
That was the first indication. And then I went out I called Ed and spoke with him. And I've said recently, what a horrible loss to lose him, because for me, knowing that Ed would take my phone call when we were still slugging it out in Buffalo and going nowhere, that meant a lot to me. And it really helped keep the fire burning in me. So I owe him a great debt for that. What a wonderful, wonderful man. But then I went up to Toronto to see them. And Ed specifically talked to me about joining the band. Then they played in Buffalo, and Dave and Paul and myself went to the show. And we knew the crew guys because we had toured with them, so all of us could kind of get in there and everything. And I remember I'm sitting at the table with David Lee Roth, and we're having a ride. And I'm looking over at the other table, and it's Paul and Dave, Talus Dave, sitting with Ed. And they had this look on their face like it wasn't too happy.
They weren't too happy you guys were talking.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Ed was telling them something, and it looked like some kind of controversy. So later on, Ed said, "Hey, come on to my room. I got to play you some tapes." And up in his room, he said, "What would you do if I asked you to join Van Halen?" And I said, "I'd get on the first plane and be there in 5 minutes."
Right.
We should.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Of course.
Wow. And my head is spinning. Oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Right.
So later, like about 10 days after that, every time we drive to the gig, Dave and Paul were pretty upset and pissed off. And finally, it blew up, and they said, Ed Van Halen said that if we don't, step up our game, so to speak, I'm paraphrasing, that he's going to steal you away from the band. And in my mind, I better shut up.
Right.
But I didn't want to say anything about it,
Right.
And it turns out he didn't. He didn't. I called him up after a few months when their tour was over and said, we don't know if we really want to make a change right now. This is just before the 1984 record and everything like that.
Right.
So he said, but I might do a solo record and I'd love to have you on that and blah, blah, blah. So we stayed close and talked a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did actually go down.
There was a lot of rumblings in the band at that time. Things were real uneasy. I know they weren't real happy with Diver Down. Eddie had voiced his opinions about it. That album, he was not happy. And I know him and Dave were butting heads about a lot of things. And, there were rumors about Dave wanting to do movies and stuff like that and different things, So I know there was a lot of tension definitely going on back and forth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, isn't as a fan that's so heartbreaking. You just see everybody all partying and hanging and jumping
Right.
around, having a
And then
great-
years
after
later
show
you
must be
hear,
great, huh?
yeah, years later you hear like, yeah, they really didn't get along so great. It took time to get through that album, but that's how things happen in bands. That's how things happen in families. You know what I mean?
Bands fight, brothers and sisters fight,
Yeah.
husbands and wives fight. It
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. And
So,
so,
Well, man, how you doing?
oh, great. Excellent, man. Well, you guys have definitely had your ups and downs, but never stop swinging, man. You always keep coming back. The band
It's-
seems to be re-energized with this latest lineup you guys got.
Yeah, and it's funny that you refer to it as the latest lineup because it's a lot of people ask, is Eric staying in the band? Because
Well,
obviously
There's been some history, right?
yeah, there's been a change up front quite a bit, but yeah, it's man, we are so psyched. Everything is just kind of hitting on all, not kind of, it is hitting on all 8 cylinders at this point, and it's a really good feeling to get all this positive feedback from fans and just people in the industry. It seems like we've been together with Eric for a really long time, but it's only been since like March, and things are going really good, and we couldn't be more excited about it.
Excellent. That's great. Yeah. And I know at the heart of Skid Row, it's always been you and Snake been writing the songs, and that's how you guys originally connected, forming Skid Row. Has the songwriting process changed for this album at all, or is it still just this feels right, this is how we're going to keep it?
Yeah, we always go with best idea wins, and you know which ideas are the best when you get in and it lights everybody up. All the guys light up and really start digging into the song, and then we get together, because with this record, there's probably about 10 other songs that we demoed, or we rehearsed in pre-production that not all of us felt it, so it's no sense really to put together a record, to have a song on a record that everyone's not 100% into. So
Right.
obviously
Definitely want the standout material.
yeah, obviously Eric wasn't in the mix when we were doing pre-production and writing, but we've already started writing for the next record, and he's contributing like crazy. He's a very talented dude. He's the first singer we ever had that played an instrument. He plays guitar and piano, and he like I said, very talented and very creative, which that it has a great work ethic as well, like the rest of us. So that's why everything just works and has blended so seamlessly.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the right fit for you guys, for sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
And I really like the latest track you guys got out, Time Bomb. What can you tell us about putting that together?
Well, believe it or not, I was watching a Beatles documentary, that really long one that was like, I forget how many parts, but I guess I was about midway through the whole thing, and just watching them create in a room together, and just from nothing, and then the ideas that became other songs or pieces of songs that they were working on. It blew my mind. It really did. And being a creative person, that just made me want to get up and write. So
Right.
I went up to the studio, and I just put a drum loop on and started playing bass to it, and Time Bomb is what came out, and it came together fairly quickly, and there were other little parts in it that we changed a bit, but the foundation of the song was just there, and it was just one of those things where I just started writing about how sometimes, especially in this day with everything we went through the past couple of years, some people took it in stride and some people just didn't take it well at all, and it just kind of based about that, just someone just like kind of wrestling with tedium and their the effects it has on their sanity.
I understand. Yeah. Obviously, some of the most influential people in music, right? The Beatles, Lennon and McCartney, probably the most legendary writing team there is. Definitely. And I know what you're saying. A lot of the artists have talked about that. What did they do in their off time? Were they creative? Did it kind of get them down? With the clubs in Buffalo back in the 80s, it was a different scene. It was a different time. And there was a lot of original music going on back then, right?
Yep. Yeah. When I first joined Actor, we were doing all covers at that time. But then we were approached by our manager at the time, was Mike Rosniak, and he proposed an idea to get on the 97 Rock album, compilation album. I think it was Volume Rocks 2. And so that's where Checking Out, we put Checking Out on there. And it just, after that, because 97 Rock, at the time, radio stations were able to play whatever they wanted to play. So the DJs were really supportive, and they would just put that record on, and we got tons of airplay. And with that success, because we started getting, we were playing 6 or 7 nights a week in Buffalo. I mean, we could actually, that's how I lived. I didn't have a 9 to 5. I was working full time with Actor. And with that, we started writing original music and put out an EP, and that was the Actor album. And we were just playing all the time. We got a lot of exposure, a lot of airplay. I mean, 97 Rock occasionally still plays Checking Out. And also in Europe, the Actor album is pretty popular in Europe. They just love, of course, it's on vinyl too, so that's an extra perk. So the club scene was sizzling. I mean, we were playing all the time. It was a time where bands, we could never hang with each other because everybody was playing, and it was really a magical time, really a fun time. And that's actually when I met Billy, because at that time when I joined Actor, I was pretty naive to the scene. I was a little bit older. I didn't start out younger because my father, come from a strict household, so I was very protective. And so that's how I finally met Billy. And Billy was very instrumental in helping with Actor and exposure. We would open up for them on a regular basis at Stage 1, at Crystal Beach. When I would go out to hear Billy, he always had me come up and jam with those guys. It was very special, and it was all very new to me. So I'm like, whoa, this is fun.
So Glenn, let's start with you if we could here. You're known as the voice of rock for those out there who may live under one. You've taken over lead vocals and bass for the band, kind of almost like what happened back in the day with Deep Purple. Can you tell us a little bit about how you joined the Dead Daisies?
Yeah, funny enough, Doug speaks about that scenario because Deep Purple were a carousel of changing parts, So as are the Dead Daisies, there's been, I guess, 3 singers now and a couple of guitar players, and we are a band of happy gentlemen who love playing rock music, and we can't wait for people to hear this new album.
Dave actually called you up, I think, and flew you out to LA when he wanted to do his solo record, right? He had some songs that he wanted to run by you.
No. He called me up and said he wanted me to be in his movie.
Oh, that's how. Okay,
wow.
I didn't know that one. Okay.
It was a weird week because we got 3 calls that week. We got a call from the William Morris Agency. This is the 4-piece house with Phil Narrow singing lead, Mark Miller on drums.
Mm-hmm.
Call from the William Morris Agency. They want to sign us and they want to have us open Yngwie's first American tour.
Right.
Great, cool. Then we got a record from Danny Goldberg, who was Gold Mountain Records. He later went on to manage Nirvana. Quite an iconic guy in the music biz. That they wanted to sign us. Great record deal. And then the third call was David Lee Roth's office calling saying, Dave would like you to be in the movie. So, when can you have a meeting? And so, well, we happen to be going out to LA because of the other call I mentioned. So we set it up a meeting. And so a funny thing happened. So when I got to LA, I called Ed and I said, Ed, can you come down to our show? We're playing the Palladium opening for Yngwie. He goes, oh man, I'm kind of busy. I go, well, all right. Okay. Well, thanks anyway. I go, I'm having a meeting with Dave tomorrow. And he goes, you're what? You're what? You're having a meeting with Dave? What's more? He goes,
you spilled the beans.
Uh-oh.
You spilled the beans.
I've opened my big fat mouth. I had to say, I guess he's doing some kind of movie and he wants me to be in it or something. And he goes, well, do me a favor, man. As soon as you're done talking with him, call me up and let me know. I think he's going to pull an Ozzy Osbourne on us. In other words, leave the band, hire like Ozzy left Black Sabbath.
Right. Right.
Right.
And
Right.
so
And
now
you were
I'm
like
thinking,
caught in the middle of this stuff.
I
kind
know.
of.
I think, Jesus, I love all those guys. I love
Right.
them all so much. They're, you know. So I got there, and Dave goes, "Well, there is a movie, but that's not what I wanted to talk to you about, because you got to
Ah.
promise me it's got to be absolutely secret. You can't tell anybody. No girlfriends, no family, no one can know." I said,
David Lee
"Okay,
Roth code of silence. Yeah.
absolutely." And we kept it too. We were good at that. Me, Steve, Greg, and Brett, we honored that all the time. And so I never called that back. I felt bad about it, but I had to. If I would have, I would have been blown out of both camps. And so sure enough, as soon as that tour was done, it was July, first week of July. Dave flew me out, and that was it. I was done. That week we went down to. I went to his house. We started working on songs. He liked Shy Boy. He wanted to use that, so I said, "Cool, let's do it."
Yeah, that was great that you got Shy Boy in there. And I wanted to ask you quick about Ladies Night in Buffalo. Was that something your take on that, or was it something that kind of just came about?
It just came about because I came home for, I think it might have been, I came home each year for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Then as the years went by, it was only Christmas. And then, because I'd always get snowed in and everything. Plus, I've lost a lot of family and not a lot of people left there anymore. But I will be doing the Christmas show December 15th in Buffalo again this year. So we're happy about that. So the original question was, Ladies Night in Buffalo.
Yep.
So when I went home, the first Thanksgiving we had in November, following that July, now we were already rehearsing and getting ready to record the record. And I got home. I got back to LA, and they said, "What did you do for Thanksgiving?" I said, "Oh, I went to Buffalo. I went out one night, and it was Ladies' Night in Buffalo." And everybody laughed. It was the idea that Buffalo was just blue collar, steel.
Right. We just sit around and watch the cars rust with 6 feet of snow 24/7.
So they thought that was really funny. So that I said it, and then we wrote around it there. So, but we, Steve and Greg and I, we just rehearsed like mad and wrote songs. And every night it was great because we would go. Dave had a garage that was filled with beer left over from the US Festival. Now, Pasadena gets pretty hot, so you can imagine it's been a couple of years in a hot garage.
Probably not so good.
Was long skunk, but we didn't care. We'd sit there with a skunk beer and tell stories, and we had a riot. It was the greatest. On the weekends, we'd go out with Dave and his bodyguard and a little entourage of people, and it was amazing times.
Yeah. When that record hit, that was huge. I mean, that really put him on the map. The songs were really great. The videos on MTV really stood out. It had to be a lot of fun making those. It looked like it anyway.
Well, it was a riot. It was me, Steve, and Greg Bissonette and Brett Tuggle get together often, and just to have a dinner, hang out, and tell stories of back in the day and how much fun we had and how great it was. It was mind blowing. I was driving a '77 Pinto with a donut fake tire on one wheel because I couldn't afford a tire. Left that behind, went to LA, and that evening there were paparazzi shooting me and Dave my first night in LA. So it was kind of an amazing set of events there. Pretty mind blowing.
Now you're sharing duties now with the founder of the Dead Daisies, Dave Lowy, after you replaced Richard Fortas on guitar in 2016, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, basically, I had been out of Whitesnake for about a year and was I was kind of just ready to get back. I had taken care of some family business, looking to get back on the road. And Glenn called me and said his normal guitar player Soren wasn't available. Could I help him do this tour? And we had a blast. It was just incredible. And then right after that, I got a call from Marco Mendoza saying that Guns N' Roses was getting back together, and that they wanted me to play guitar as Richard Fortas was going back to Guns, and we were going to make a new record and go start from there. And so that's what we did. We made a new record, make some noise, and another couple records. Finally, we've got a lineup with Glenn Hughes in it, and it's amazing. It's really, this is our second album together, and we're having a blast.
Happens with that in the future, and that's great. That's Scream Taker's going to be coming up, and you guys are going to be touring with that. in the back of your mind, any plans to do any of your own stuff again, to put out another album down the line a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, I want to do a new Jim Crean record. That'll be my 10th. I got 9 solo albums out, so I'm gonna start writing for another Jim Crean record. I get asked a lot about that, as a matter of fact. So that would be a follow up to London Fog. So I'm gonna start that process. I mean, what happened with Scream Taker was during COVID. Initially, me and Steph were starting to write songs for a Jim Crean record, and then he was working on an album called Hollywood Monsters. I did a bunch of songs on that, and we just had tons of time on our hands. I mean, we're all locked down, right? So what are you going to do? And I got a home studio. He's got a home studio. Most people do. Most musicians have home studios. So we're just back and forth ideas. And then I talked to Vinny and I said, "Hey, Vin, you got to hear this stuff." He listened. He goes, "Wow, this is great. It sounds like Dio Black Sabbath." I go, "It really does." So we decided, let's make this a real band. Become a band with this thing. And that's what happens. So Scream Taker was going to be a Jim Crean record. And then, as a matter of fact, I had the whole thing worked out where I had an album cover made and everything for Jim Crean. And then it just turned into something bigger, meaning the Scream Taker. And I like where it went. Because it's a heavy, it sounds like Black Sabbath Dio, but it doesn't sound like a Jim Crean record. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yep.
I'm glad we're separating the two, because a Jim Crean record, you normally expect a certain sound, like with Velvet Crush, Insatiable, London Fog, all that. This is not like that. This is heavier and real dark and badass, really badass. Jer's smiling. Jer's gonna love it.
Oh,
I
we're
know.
gonna love it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, we hope you'll give us a taste of it when you can, so we get the chance to check it out. We're really looking forward to it. I know I've been bugging you and asking you during the shows, what's going on with Scream Taker, and you probably
That's
couldn't
cool.
really say, But
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you kept asking me, because in all honesty, I couldn't wait to tell you. This is the first interview I did since we got signed. So you're going to be seeing a ton of stuff about it. They're going to really get behind this. The label's really excited about it. I'll send you a couple tracks, both you guys, and you can, for personal use, to check it out. But if you close your eyes, it sounds like something off, like it sounds like the child of Holy Diver meets Mob Rules Heaven and Hell. It sounds like
We're gonna love it then.
child of that.
Yeah, I love your performances of the Sabbath and Dio stuff. Obviously, the Peace Brothers tour, you wouldn't be singing with them out on the road.
Right.
So it's another track I really like, Jim, because I love the lyrics. These words you speak, outstanding drums, great guitar tracks on this, and another song where the vocals and the music just gel right together for me.
That one, Vinny arranged that one, because initially it was a mess, really. The song.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
There were so many different parts, and I came up with so many ideas, and the words were just cool. The words were really good, but it wasn't really flowing. And then Vinny said, "Hang on," and in Vinny's expertise, he took it and he chopped it up and kind of rearranged it, and then we re-recorded it. And now it's a really cool tune.
I think it's an outstanding song on there for sure. It's an outstanding album. I love the Sabbath and Dio influences for all us metal fans out there. Definitely, it's great.
Yeah.
And I got one quick thing for Vinny. I got one quick thing for you. Why the hell are you not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? That's all I want to know.
Because they're a bunch of fucking assholes.
That's all I want to know. Why you're not in there? That's only my only
Come
question,
on.
really, for you.
I mean, Sabbath wasn't in it for how long, right? They got in it, and I've been to that place, and there wasn't really much of Ronnie in there either.
Right. I stood in front of one showcase of metal stuff, and that was it.
It's like, this Ronnie? Come on. Rainbow, Man on the Silver Mountain, Long Live Rock and Roll, and then Sabbath, Heaven and Hell album, and the rest of the albums we did, and then Dio, and he's only in there for like this 12-inch square placemat or something, and they'll mention me, it's like, hey, you know what, I've been around, I'm still around from all these years, so I guess it doesn't count for anything.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. We all know that they don't really have their shit together there, and I don't know what it took to get Judas Priest in this year, but they're finally going in.
They're not in there, come on.
Yeah, I know. It took like, we had to move a boulder, and then Dolly Parton was gonna be put in, weird shit. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, I
And
just
one
wanted
note,
to,
on a
It
note
doesn't
on
make
that,
any sense. Doesn't make any sense. to me.
Dolly Parton, she's heavy, man.
well,
She's
she
heavy.
actually stepped
top
down.
heavy.
She stepped
Top
down.
heavy.
She said, I don't want to go in. I don't
But then
deserve to
she
be in.
changed
And
her
she's
mind.
right? You're not a rocker. I love you, Dolly Parton, but you're not a rocker.
Actually,
Holy
that's what I
Diver
should
album.
say. How come you're not in the Hall of Fame? I didn't want to go in, I'm hanging out with Dolly and we didn't want to.
You got better things going on. Or
The
you gonna
next
say,
Dream
Jim?
Taker record is going to feature Dolly Parton, so it's going to be great.
Nice. I was just
Why
going to say
not?
the Holy Diver album influenced pretty much every
Everybody.
musician from
That should
my
be in there.
generation.
That should be in
Well,
the.
I'd say definitely, yeah, definitely.
That my
I say-
generation.
I say
of
Holy Diver
musicians.
and Live
And Heaven and
Evil,
Hell.
Heaven
And
and
Heaven and
Hell.
Hell.
Heaven and Hell.
Heaven-
Yeah.
Heaven and Hell too.
Heaven
But
and
Holy
Hell
Diver.
for me was like a huge album. When I that's still one of my favorite albums.
Which one?
Every
So much
time
stuff was built on.
I meet people like, oh man, Holy Dive. Dave Grohl,
Yeah,
when
that's what I
see him
mean.
here and there,
And those
he's
guys are all my
totally
generation of musicians.
influenced by that album, They
Yeah.
even
Exactly.
went to Sound City to record their album, Nirvana, because there was a platinum Holy Diver on the wall. And they said, that's it. We got to record here.
And what I was reading here is you ended up actually starting to play in some of the same clubs that Billy was, and you were in the New Rock Workshop, I think, when you were about 16.
Yeah, 16, 17 years old, New Rock Workshop. We played a place called the My House in Plainview, Long Island. And Billy was in a band called the Hassles. And we were one of the house bands and he was the other house band. And sometimes they would put us together on the same bill and we'd play the same night. And that's how I didn't meet him to shake his hand and go, hi, my name's Liberty. And
Right.
Billy. We would just pass in the dark and say hi. But it wasn't until I was watching them one night and I was in love with the band called Traffic. They were like one of my favorite bands. Steve Winwood was the lead singer. Jim Capaldi was the drummer.
Yeah, they were real big for a while. Yeah.
And Dave Mason was in that band also.
Yep.
And I just loved that band. And I thought I was the only one that knew about Traffic. When their first album came out, Dear Mr. Fantasy. And I'm standing there watching the Hassles, and all of a sudden Billy breaks into the song called Colored Rain, which is on that album. And I thought, oh my God, he knows that song.
Right.
This guy's really cool. Finally I see somebody that I can relate to that
Right.
is listening to the same thing I'm listening.
Right. There was a connection there for you to take a little notice, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So when I got called for the gig, he was looking for another drummer, and Doug Stegmeyer told him, well, you know the guy, you've met him already, and then we found out we had a whole lot more than just Mr. Fantasy in common.
Project you moved on to after that was an amazing, outstanding band. Also, Mr. Big, just some amazing folks in that. Eric Martin, Paul Gilbert, amazing stuff. Addicted to That Rush came out, and I think everybody stood up and said, "Wow, holy crap!"
Yeah, and sadly yesterday, our original manager, Herbie Herbert, passed away. And
Oh, wow.
without Herbie, there would have been no Mr. Big. He was
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he was the greatest. He put Journey together. He was the guy who said years ago, why don't we sell T-shirts at the show with the band's name on them? Because I went to see Hendrix. There was no merch.
Right. Yeah. I just saw that on your site that he had passed, and I posted that on her. It's such a huge loss for him.
Yeah, he was one of the first guys to do sound systems. Traveled with the band, a founding father of the music biz, and with him as our manager, even as somewhat indifferent Atlantic Records, he pounded them. We got the superstar royalty rate from our second record on. And just incredible tours. We toured with Rush on the Presto tour, again on the Roll of Bones tour, Aerosmith, Bryan Adams, Scorpions, and his best buddy was the biggest promoter in Japan. So he made sure to take great care of us. We went there. As a result, Mr. Big did incredibly well in Japan. So it was all really hinging on our connection with Herbie Herbert. He was an amazing, amazing man, a brilliant manager, and so artist conscious. He never took any publishing money from us. His commissions were low and reasonable. I think it was Moby Grape, the band. One of the guys was living under an overpass somewhere, and he found him and got the guy, and got him back, got him a place, and helped him out, and helped him. He was always helping musicians that were maybe run of bad luck or something. He was a giving, wonderful, wonderful man, and a good kind of tyrant, but for the artist, not against the artist. He would fight for us, and so Mr. Big did great. We ended up with the #1 single. Herbie engineered that completely too. He's why it was #1.
Just to be with you.
Yeah.
To be with you.
Yes, sir. And we still, I still get email from people from everywhere, from Madagascar, from Iraq, from you name it, all over the world. And that song means a lot to them. And amazing emails, how much when you put a record out, how it touches people in so many places around the world. They write to me that, they were, believe it or not, considering, killing themselves, or, they had a death in the family or some horrible situation, and Mr. Big Music got them through it.
That's the amazing power of great music, right? That's the amazing power of great music. If songs or lyrics and reach you or help you or make you feel better, that's like what it's all about, right?
Oh, it's unreal. And I'm a big fan myself, and music affects me very, very much, more than anything. And I listen to all kinds of stuff, but to be a part of something that does that to someone else that's my pay. I'm glad that I have live a decent life with the money I've made out of music, but the real payment, boy, you can't beat that. It's pretty awesome.
Hey, on the road here on the Judas Priest tour, getting ready to land in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah, you guys just played Connecticut the other day or something, right?
Yeah, I think Connecticut was last week. So
it was last week. Okay, I just caught the Facebook feed. Yeah. So you actually got your nickname early from one of your early music teachers when you switched to bass, right? And that's when you got the nickname, the Whip.
Yeah, I mean, I was, back in the formative years when you're learning, guitar. Back then, there was no internet, no cell phones, nothing like that. It was all by ear or sight reading.
Right.
So, I played bass and then I had guitar. There's, vast record collection. Right. And I would, and then at parties, where guys get together, guitar player guys get together and start showing each other, hey, this is what I figured out. Hey, this is what I figured out. We'd show everybody show what they learned.
Right, just the different licks and stuff, yeah.
Right, and it's like, I learned this from the Led Zeppelin song. I learned this from the Mountain song. I learned this, from Deep Purple, And it would be like, I'd be showing something and then do a fast run and, and one of the guys said, dude, you whip on the guitar. So, and then at parties and stuff, it kind of just blossomed and people started going like, who's Whip? Who's Whip?
He's one of the rock's premier vocalists. Starting first from his early days in Grand Prix, he then went on to become the founding member and vocalist for Macaulay Schenker Group. And today we'll be chatting with him about his latest project, Black Swan. Please welcome to the show, Robin Macaulay.
Hey,
Robin,
guys,
how are you?
I'm good, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. So tell us about this new project you got going on, Black Swan. Sounds pretty interesting. I'm really liking it.
Well, we're into our, as they call it, our sophomore album, second release from us called Generation Mind. First one was Shake the World right at the top end of the pandemic. Very exciting. Jeff Pilton on bass, guitar, Doc and and Machine, of course, Foreigner. And he also produces both records. Red Beach on guitar, Winger Whitesnake, Matt Starr, Ace Frehley, Mr. Big on drums, and yours truly all came about really Frontiers Records wanting to put a super group together, which I hate that title. Anyway, so Jeff called me on that subject, and I went, and he said, I've already spoken to Reb, have a good relationship with Reb because of the Talkin Association. And Jeff and I have known each other for 30 plus years. So we're like family. And I think my first question to him was, you'll be playing bass, right? And he goes, nope, no, I won't be playing bass. I'll be kind of taking a back seat, producing. I'll get into the co-writing if you guys want that, but I won't be playing bass. And I went, well, okay, bye, see ya.
When did he say that?
Yeah, and he goes, no, come on, man. I got a bunch of really good bass players lined up, and I just have to check availability. But no, it's going to be great. Please say yes. And he goes, you're the only vocalist I've talked to. You're the only one I want to be on this. And Reb's totally up for it. So let's just say yes and move forward. And I went, if you play bass. So Laura, excuse me, long story endless. We got into the writing, and you know, because Jeff's in the studio and it's his studio, you know, he'd put down a quote unquote a guide bass.
Okay. Right.
A guide bass, which of course wasn't a guide bass. And Reb and I would just go, yeah. Okay, Jeff. Moving on to the next song. Great job, dude. I'm glad you're in the band.